Hey, a collective sigh of relief across Birds Nation. The Eagles dodged a big blow with the Landon Dickerson news. But see who's stepping in to replace the Pro Bowler in the interim. Plus, John Clark speaks with Doug Pederson on the challenges of trying to repeat with the Eagles. And the Birds begin joint practices with Shedeur Sanders and the Browns tomorrow. We'll set the stage a little later in the show. Hey, good to see you. Welcome into Birds Huddle, presented by Toyota, official automotive partner of the NFL, alongside the Michael Jordan of the mock draft, Mr. Dave Zangaro. I'm Danny Pomels. 2 full practices with the Browns on tap this week. I'm sure you can't wait, Dave.
It's always exciting when the joint practices come around because there's always a chance you might see a little kerfuffle out there in the field. But it is good work. You have 2 fields going at once. You have the offense on one side, defense on the other. A lot of good competition. Yeah,
a lot of egos and a lot of guys battling for positions, so you know something's bound to pop off. But the joint practices should help the defending champs get ready for their road to a repeat. Today on his Takeoff podcast, John Clark spoke with a guy who knows a thing or two about trying to defend a Super Bowl title and former Eagles head coach Doug Pederson. Here's what Dougie P had to say about the challenge the Birds face.
I reached out to Mike Holmgren after we won our Super Bowl there, Super Bowl 52, and in Philly. I reached out to Mike Holmgren the next year because, you know, he was my head coach when we went back to back in Green Bay. And like I said, we lost that second game, but I just wanted to pick his brain and some, you know, even like Coach Vermeil, legendary coaches that have kind of been there, you know, and have won championships that you know, what did they do the next year? How did they lead their football team? And quite honestly, both gentlemen were basically the same. They were like, you got to push even harder. You know, you've got to demand even more. If you got to be the, you know, sort of that a-hole, you know, on your team, you need to be that guy. And that was kind of what they were saying to me that year is like, you know, find that niche. I mean, don't change who you are, but at the same time, you've got to continue to push and really push your guys harder.
Real throwback video, Dougie P and Deshaun Jackson dapping each other up there. But time for our 3-point stance presented by Toyota. Stance number 1, the pressure to repeat is real. But Dave, the Eagles don't seem to be showing any of the signs of that pressure so far this summer.
Yeah, at least not outwardly, right? And look, of course they're under pressure, but they're under pressure every single season. You could argue they were under more pressure last year, the way 2023 ended with that collapse, than they are this year, coming back as Super Bowl champions. So that's the way they have to handle it. You heard talking about the repeat there. The Eagles aren't using that word. That's an off-limits word.
4-letter word, right?
It's something they're not saying at all in the Novaterra complex, and that's the right way to approach this too, is because you have to be where your feet are. And as cliche as that is, like that is true. You can't think too far in the future. You're right now in training camp. You're going to have game 1 September 4th, and you can't really think too far beyond that. So I think they have handled it well, and I think it comes from the top. I think it comes from Nick Sirianni. I think it comes from Jalen Hurts, especially Jalen Hurts. He's not looking too far in the future. And I also think, like, the difference when we're talking about that Doug Pederson team trying to come back from 2017, I think this team, and they've used the term sustained success to talk about this team, I think they're built for that. I think they're a younger team that won the Super Bowl last year, and I think naturally it's going to be easier to have that sustained success this time.
Yeah, check out the rest of that conversation with Doug Pederson and John Clark on the Takeoff podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. Let's get to our second stance. Brett Toth could be the Week 1 starter if Landon Dickerson is out. Dickerson is week to week right now after needing a minor procedure on his meniscus. And Dave, based on what we saw today, would it be Toth if Dickerson is out?
Well, that's what it was in this practice. Just one day of practice, but Brett Toth has been operating as the backup second-team left guard. And when Dickerson has missed time earlier in camp, both with a ribs injury and then a knee injury, it has been Toth to step in there at left guard. So they're simply just bumping him up the depth chart. It doesn't necessarily mean that it will be Toth if he has to play in a real game. They have some other options. Darian Kennard today, a guy who's been with the team for a year, he was the second-team left guard, so maybe a little competition beneath the surface there. You see Kennard getting some reps, and he had been on the right side of the line all of camp before that, so pretty notable that he flips over to the other side of the center. But I still think, honestly, if this Dickerson injury is something that keeps him out a week or two, their best bet might be to move Tyler Steen to left guard and then replace him with Matt Pryor, who actually played pretty well for the Bears last year. I think the nature of this injury and the timeline with Dickerson makes it more likely they won't do that, because Jeff Stoutland doesn't like to really move things around if he doesn't have to.
Right.
And, you know, if this has been a long-term thing, I think that's definitely what they would have done.
Are you thinking that Dickerson, we've seen how much he wanted to get on the field in the Super Bowl. This is a guy who's going to try to force the issue a bit to try to get back as quickly as possible. Is it in the Birds' better interest to try to make sure he's fully, completely healed before letting him get back out there on the field?
It's a good question, because you're right. What we know of Landon Dickerson, I mean, if they had to duct tape his knee, he'll be out there, right? So I think there is a time where you have to protect a player from himself and do what's in the best interest of that player, but also of your team. And I don't know what percent Landon Dickerson is better than whatever option they go with. And it wouldn't be 100%. It would be probably significantly less than that. Landon's really good, and he means a lot to this team, but you also have to worry about, hey, after week one, there are a lot more games, 16 more games in the regular season after that. So you have to balance that a little bit. But if it comes down to a pain tolerance and they leave it up to Landon, I think we know what's going to happen.
If you had to bet, will he be out there or not?
Yeah, it's tough right now. I think yes. Okay. I'm leaning toward yes right now, but there's no guarantee of that. And I'm also reading into Brett Toth being out there on this first day of practice without Landon. If they were worried maybe there would be a switch, because I'm not sold on the idea of Toth being the guy in week one if Landon can't play.
All right, let's get to our third stance. Outside cornerback is a wide open competition, folks. It was a two-man race between Kelee Ringo and Adoree Jackson, who both struggled in the preseason opener against the Bengals. The Eagles also traded for Jacorian Bennett from the Las Vegas Raiders. Here are Ringo and Jackson on their takeaways from game action against Cincinnati.
Jamar and Joe Burrow, they're one of the best in the game at their own positions, you know. But, man, coming out there and just definitely seeing things I continue to work on, you know. I feel like being able to see those things, I feel like when you expose things that you need to be able to work on, you can only get better from that, you know. So, man, just always keeping that foot, you know, having the utmost confidence you have in yourself all the time.
The biggest takeaway, at least for me, of the game was just the details, fundamentals, and technique will really help you thrive and succeed, you know, in this league.
Dave, we know the Eagles love a healthy competition. How is this one going to play out, though?
Yeah, Danny, it's one of the bigger questions remaining about this team, because I think the hope entering camp was that one of these two guys would just run away with the job
and win it.
Yeah, and you wouldn't even have to make a decision, right? The decision would be made for you. And ideally, it would have been Kelee Ringo, the younger of the two players, the guy you drafted in the fourth round but gave up a future third to make that move into the fourth round. And it clearly hasn't gone that way. And it's not like Kelee Ringo has been awful. It's not like Adoree Jackson has been awful. They've both done some really good things too, but too many ups and downs. And there's no way to look at that Jacorian Bennett trade and not think that it's an indictment on the way the battle has gone so far. So I think Bennett's going to have an opportunity to get some more reps and maybe compete for that job. Outside chance of an Eli Ricks or a Mac McWilliams getting into that competition as well. But it's a big deal, that position, because you have Quinyon Mitchell on one side of the field. Even if he's traveling and facing the best receiver, which is very possible, they're not going to throw a lot of footballs that way because he's really good, and you can only do so much to hide an outside corner. They're going to get picked on no matter who's out there, and whoever that player is has to be ready to make some plays, and I think there is some concern about it.
All right, and worth noting that Drew Makuba got first-team reps, and he was back out there on the practice field today. Can he come back to win that job, you think?
I think he can. There's enough time. Sidney Brown has done a good job to be out there, be in the right place. Haven't seen a ton of plays from him, and even though I think he did a good job to try to widen that gap, I think Makuba has the opportunity to catch back up to him. He was back on the practice field this week, got first-team reps. They seem to like him, too. So I think they're going to give him every opportunity to win that job.
Safety next to Reed Blankenship, and the opposite side of Quinyon Mitchell. Two competitions to keep an eye on. Time for the playbook presented by Supercuts. When we come back here on Birds Huddle, we'll set the stage for the Eagles' joint practices with the Browns, including the key storylines to watch. Plus, Reuben Frank looks at the Eagles' depth off the edge, and Deshaun Jackson and Michael Vick where once teammates now turn opposing coaches. Hear from them on their upcoming matchup at the Link in October. This is Birds Huddle, presented by Toyota, official automotive partner of the NFL. Stick around.
Birds Huddle, presented by Toyota, proud partner of the Philadelphia Eagles and official automotive partner of the NFL.